All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Please be seated. Good morning. Madam Court Officer, can you please call the case?
Good morning, Your Honors. This is case KSC BC 2020-05, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Salih, Mustafa.
Thank you. First of all, I will call appearances. Let me see. Mr. Prosecutor, I see that you are in the same composition as yesterday.
Your Honors, indeed, we are in the same composition as yesterday. Nothing has changed.
Okay, thank you very much. And for the Victims' Counsel, I think that goes...
Yes, good morning, everybody. And indeed, we are the same as yesterday. Thank you.
Very well, very well. And the Defense Counsel?
Yes, Your Honor, good morning. We have the same composition as yesterday, and Mr. Mustafa is joining by remote.
Very well. Mr. Mustafa, can you hear me well?
Yes, Your Honor.
And for the record, you're appearing before Trial Panel 1. Before we continue with the testimony of SPO witness 4485, I want to give a heads up regarding the planning side of the case. And that will be the following. As anticipated in the hearing of the 13th of December last year, and for your reference, that is page 1920, lines 9 to 11, the panel would issue in January 2022 a decision setting out the next procedural steps in this case. And we inform you that this decision will likely be issued at some point next week. And this decision will set out a set of procedural steps and deadlines in accordance with Rule 114, 119, 129 of the rules from the close of the SPO case to be set on the 4th of February 2022 up until a defense preparation conference and a victim status conference to take place on the 17th or the 18th of February 2022. And this is all, of course, it's not fixed yet. We will see if we can get there, but this is our planning for the moment. Very well. Now we will continue with the testimony of Mr. Salih. Madam Court Usher, can we please usher the witness into the courtroom? Good morning. Please have a seat. Mr. Salih, good morning. Welcome back to the Specialist Chambers. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. I do. Yes. Yes, good.
Today, with the defense examination, I remind you that you're still under oath and you have the obligation to tell the truth. Do you understand that, Mr. Salih?
Yes, I do.
Defense Counsel, I've taken notice that you will be using around half an hour for your examination. I see you're moving your hands, and I will interpret that as less or more. But I mean, I suggest to stick around that period of time. Please proceed. Mike, please.
Good morning, Mr. Witness. Mr. Witness, yesterday we were speaking about what we call the compound in Salih, which was originally from the Krasniqi family. You recall that?
Po?
Yes.
Yes.
The question is, do you remember if there was any electricity available at that particular compound in the period of April 1999?
Nuk jam e sigurt.
I'm not sure because we used to have a lot of problems with electricity all over the village. The most so in an abandoned house, if you like. So I can't say for sure.
The problems with the electricity, did those problems arise from any Serbian interference regarding that?
Po.
Yes, yes.
Power station nearby?
Jo centrale
No. The one that is closer is in Obilic.
Has that been a target of the Serbians?
jo ai ishte i menaxhuar.
No, it was managed by the Serbs.
And the problems that you're saying with the electricity, did that come from that particular power station?
Qoftë nga ai stacion.
From that power station, or the power outages might be due to the electricity grid. I'm not certain for the moment. I can't say when we had and when we didn't have electricity. Most of the time we were in darkness.
If you would visit that particular compound of that, I call it the Salih compound, I mean the compound where the Krasniqi family had their houses. Was it for you in March and April 1999 easy to access that particular compound?
Nuk di çfarë kuptimi.
I don't know in what sense do you mean? There were no problems.
Could you go in and out? Could people go in and out of that compound?
Nuk kam njohuri, nuk di.
I have no knowledge about that. I don't think there was any special obstacle.
There barrier or bar or whatever to get into the compound that you recall?
Defense Counsel, yesterday we discussed about this specific location that there was a fence,
Yes.
partly. So
Yes.
I would stick also to those wording because now it should be a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
No, it should be more specific, Defense Counsel, with reference to what has already been said.
Was there a barrier that you need to go through before you would get access to that compound, or was it just regularly accessible?
Nuk më kujtohet që
I don't recall to have been any barrier. I don't remember anything like that.
If you would access the compound, would somebody need to identify himself? You or anybody else?
sigurisht dikush që nuk ka qenë.
Of course, if there was someone, a passerby, that wanted to access it, like in every military base, he would be asked to show a document, an ID, or to introduce himself.
Për bazat në të
I'm saying this from my experience of bases that I visited.
Compound, would you need to identify yourself when accessing the compound?
Në qoftë se të kërkohej,
If you were asked to do that, yes. But we knew each other, so it didn't happen in my case.
ka pas ndonjë pengesë në qoftë
I don't think there was any problem for us circulating through our bases.
So, Mr. Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Your Honor, the question in this regard should be more specific, because I think the question was a general: would anyone enter freely without being checked? But maybe the witness understood it differently. Maybe the question was about himself as KLA member, KLA commander, and this access could be different in comparison to that access of a general population, for example, who are not members of the Kosovo Liberation Army. So what I'm trying to convey as a message, Your Honors, is maybe to direct the Council to be more specific in the questions, including this one.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. What I have understood is that the witness has said that normally he understood that people had to be identified, and that in this specific case, if it would be the witness himself, it might be so that he didn't have to identify himself. So I think in the end he gave a clear answer, but please, Defense Counsel, take this in mind, the suggestion of the Mr. Prosecutor.
If anybody would access, even if it would be a KLA member, an unknown KLA member, would that person need to identify himself, or was it not necessary?
unë besoj
I think that in such cases it's normal for someone to identify himself.
Who you would need to identify?
secila bazë
Every base of the KLA was protected by its members who were there. So that particular member that at the moment that someone presented himself there is the guard of the facility there.
And do you recall the name of a guard?
rojet janë ndrruar.
But guards were changed every 8 hours. They rotated.
You don't know any particular name that you recall?
Ja, nuk di.
No, I don't know. I know that they took turns. There wasn't a particular one, or only 4 persons. All the soldiers that were stationed at a particular base had the duty of doing duty when their turn came. So all the soldiers in a military base took their turns to do guard duty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. I would like to go into private session, Your Honor.
Madam Court Officer, could you bring us into private session, please? out of the courtroom.
Okay.
Madam Court Usher, could you have the witness put on his... I want to explain what I will be doing. I prefer to do it. Yes. If he can put on the headphones. Sorry. Mr. Witness, I will ask you to be outside the courtroom for a few minutes. It won't take long, but I have to discuss something with the parties and the Victims' Council, which I think it's very important that you are not present. And I think for that situation, it's better to be outside the courtroom. Yes? Thank you, Madam Court Usher. Defense Counsel, I heard you say, and we are now in private session, I heard you say that you would be going through a list of witnesses.
Sorry.
And the fact that we don't want this witness to know that who are at least the protected witnesses.
Right.
And so
I
I would like to, maybe you could do it in such a way that you don't mention now any protected witness.
Yeah.
You go back into open session, you do another question or two, and then we go back into private session. But I would not like to have a connection.
Yes, I understand.
With this remark.
I understand. And by the way, I misspoke. It was not the witnesses that I meant to say. I meant to say something else, but I won't say that as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Very
Sorry
well.
about that. Yeah.
Just no,
Slip of the tongue.
Good. Then we can continue. And
Mr. Mustafa.
Mr. Mustafa, you have the floor.
And there was Jacob.
Your Honor, I could not hear the answer because the line was interrupted. I couldn't hear the last answer of Fatmir. I heard the question about which base, and then that was all I heard.
Let us go back.
Every base of Calais.
Yes, we are. I'm looking for where that might have been. If you want access to compounds. So the last thing page 8, that might be line 14. Mr. Soapy, do you know a person with the name? Defense Counsel, maybe you could help your.
I think.
Yes. It is page 7.
Page 7.
And line 8. Every base on the KLA was.
Yes.
Every base on the K was protected. Okay, very well. Then I would request. Then I request. Is that every base on the KLA was protected? Is that where you start missing it? Do you recall that you heard something about that?
Ja, en broeiter komt het.
No, protected I didn't hear. Only the beginning of the answer. every KLA base, and that was all I heard.
Did you hear anything about, do you recall to whom you would need to identify?
You.
No, no.
Okay, then we have to go up even more. Were you still present when I discussed with the defense counsel and with Mr. Prosecutor regarding
Paul.
that?
Yes,
Paul.
yes.
And did you hear, and if anybody would access, even it would be an unknown KLA member, would that person need to be, would need to identify?
Paul.
Did you hear?
Yes.
Paul.
Do you recall to whom you would need to identify? That you did not hear.
You.
Okay.
No, no.
Page 7, line 7.
Okay.
And Defense Counsel, my request to you is if you could start reading it out from there.
I will.
Thank you. And after, when you are finished, I will let the witness in again.
Okay.
Yeah? You have the floor, and thank you.
I'm going to sit a little bit closer to my screen. And do you recall the name of a guard? Answer, but guards were changed every 8 hours. They rotated. Question, okay. So you don't know any particular name that you recall? No. Answer, no, I don't know. I know that they took turns. There wasn't a particular one or only 4 persons. All the soldiers that were stationed at the particular base had the duty of doing duty when their turn came. So all those soldiers in the military base took their turns to guard duty, to do guard duty.
Defense Counsel, I interrupt you. You started at line 12, but I understood from Mr. Mustafa that he did not hear also the previous question. Do you recall to whom you would need to identify? And then every base on the KLA was protected by its members who were there. So that particular member that at the moment that someone presented himself there is the guard of the facility there. So now we have covered that too, and you can continue with line 20 on the same page.
Okay. The question is, thank you very much, Mr. Witness. Mr. Van Bonnet, I would like to go in. I would like to go into private session, Your Honor. Then the presiding judge answers, Madam Court Officers, could you bring us into private session, please? And then the court officer, Your Honors, we are now in private session. Thank you, says the presiding judge, Madam Court Officer. Mr. Van Bonnet, Your Honors, just to explain, the presiding judge answers, defense, Mr. Van Bonnet, yes. Presiding judge, could we? Mr. Van Bonnet, sorry. Presiding judge says,
interpreters know that we cannot hear Mr. Van Bonnet very well, and also the stenographer notes that he's reading too fast. Thank you.
Keep this procedure that thank you, Madam Court Officer, and then I give you the floor. That's the way we've been doing it the last months, so you have the floor. Question of Mr. Van Bonnet. I just want to go through a list of witnesses, and that's why I think those people shouldn't be compromised in any matter, whether they're known or unknown. My question? okay. Presiding judge says, and I would like to have the court usher the witness for a moment out of the courtroom. Mr. Van Bonnet says, okay. The presiding judge says, Madam Court Officer, Madam Court Usher, could you have the witness put on his, I want to explain what I will be doing. I prefer to do it. Yes, if he can put on his headphones. Sorry. Mr. Witness, I will ask you to be outside the courtroom for a few minutes. It won't take long, but I have to discuss something with parties and victims' counsel, which I think it's very important that you are not present, and I think for that situation it's better to be outside the courtroom. Presiding judge continues. Thank you, Madam Court Usher. Defense counsel, I heard you say, and we are now in private session, I heard you say that you would be going through a list of witnesses. Mr. Van Bonnet says, sorry. Presiding judge continues, and the fact that we don't want witnesses to know who are at least protected witnesses. Mr. Van Bonnet, right. And so I, Mr. Van Bonnet, I understand. I like to. Maybe you could do it in a way that you don't mention now any protected witness. You go back into open session, you do another question or two, and then we go back into private session. But I would like to have a connection. Yes, I understand. With this remark, Mr. Van Bonnet, I understand, and by the way, I misspoke. It was not the witnesses that I meant. I meant to say something else, but I won't say that as well. Okay, very well. Sorry about that, Your Honor. Presiding judge, okay, just know that Mr. Van Bonnet says, slip of the tongue. Presiding judge, good, then we can continue. And then I asked Mr. Mustafa, and that is the point where Mr. Mustafa said, presiding judge says, Mr. Mustafa, you have the floor.
Okay.
Mr. Mustafa says that he did not catch it because the line was interrupted.
Okay. And then we can continue
Yes.
with where Mr. Mustafa was present.
Yes.
Very well. We will now first go back into public session to usher the witness in, and then you can request again to go into a private session.
Let me just make any other question in between in order to have a clear...
I leave it up to you, but for the publicity of the proceedings, we need to go back into
Yes.
public session. Madam Court Usher, could you bring us back into public session, please?
Your Honor, we're now back in public session.
Thank you very much. Madam Court Usher, could you bring the witness back into the courtroom, please? Welcome back, Mr. Witness. The defense counsel will now continue with the examination.
Mr. Witness, the Brigade 153 had its headquarters in Slash, whether that was in your place or the place near the school. I find it at this moment irrelevant. I have just another question regarding that. was there any representative office or extra office of the Brigade 153 in Mramor, in the village of Mramor?
مديا تاميو.
To my knowledge, no.
Thank you very much. And then I would like to go into private session, Your Honor, with your permission.
Madam Court Officer, could you bring us into private session, please?
Your Honors, we're in open session.
Thank you, Madam Court Officer. Defense Counsel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things. Did you wear yourself a uniform?
På
Yes.
uniform camouflage.
Camouflage uniform.
And did you have any particular insignia on that uniform?
På
Yes.
What's that?
ishte shenja ushtria
It was the insignia bearing the text Kosovo Liberation Army and the acronym UCK.
And did it have also a kind of a logo or something that you, other than the letters, did it display any particular logo?
Po normal ka qenë
Of course, it was a special logo, Kosovo Liberation Army, and on the top UCK. And here on the sleeve it was also UCK. The two-headed eagle was in the middle, which is a symbol of our nation.
And do you know if all the people of the brigade 153 would wear such uniform and such insignia? Or if it's not a complete uniform, if they would wear a coat, would they wear that?
nderuar avokat.
We were not a regular army, dear counsel, to have uniform for each and every soldier, to have our soldiers wearing the same uniform, all of them. We served our soldiers with uniforms to the extent we could. Some had full uniforms, some had just part of uniform. However, the general uniform of the KLA soldiers was their will to fight and liberate our country. As for the uniforms, the KLA uniform in many cases was also misused. It was misused especially by the paramilitary and military Serbian forces who, under the uniform of the KLA, committed hideous massacres. I will just mention for illustration an incident when members of Serbian units wearing KLA uniforms in Peja entered a shop and killed members of their own nation, that is Serbs, so as to blame the KLA, and so that the international community condemned the KLA as a terrorist organization. As for the uniforms that we wore, as I said, we did not have complete uniforms, all of us.
I urge you, Mr. Witness, to stick to answer the question, yeah, and don't bring your elaboration too far. Defense Counsel, you have the floor.
Yes. As for people of the BIA unit, did they wear the same KLA uniform as the other KLA soldiers?
Po.
Yes.
Jo.
No.
I have a couple of questions regarding medical attention. If people needed medical attention, where was exactly that facility where they could get medical attention?
Godina kumonta froesh.
The facility where they could get medical attention, well, there were several, one in Mramor, one in Zlash, and one in Marevs. In other villages, wherever needed, there was a certain location that was designated for medical help in case it was needed, especially for the civilian population, which was in great numbers present in that region at the time.
And if you speak about the medical facility in Zlaž, I would like to speak with you about that before the offensive, and that is what I call the second offensive. Was that medical attention, medical facility, was that occupied by who actually?
Pas offensivas?
After the offensive?
Before the second offensive, you said yesterday it was the 18th of April. I'm calling in the period before 18th of April.
There was a location where we kept the wounded and the ill. It was a private house. And today it is marked as the house where the ill or the wounded were treated.
Thank you very much. That location, how far is that from the school?
1 kilometer.
1 kilometer.
And, so to speak, on top of the school, would you be able to see it?
To my knowledge, maybe it is visible.
Lost the contact.
Mr. Mustafa, this morning I was assured that it seemed that the problems were resolved, but that is apparently not the case. Welcome back, Mr. Mustafa. What was the last thing you heard?
The
last thing I heard was when Fatmi started to answer the question related to medical care, where the medical care facility was located or something like that.
Line 14. Yes. So page 25. And then you said, Defense Counsel, I have a couple of questions regarding medical attention. If people needed medical attention, where was exactly that facility where they could get medical attention?
Yes.
Where we lost where you lost the connection with the court?
Yes, Your Honor. Up to that point, I could hear, and then there was an interruption.
Very well, Mr. Mustafa. I will request the Defense Counsel to read it out from there. Defense Counsel, would you be so kind to read it from page 25, line 16?
Yes, Your Honor. It starts with an answer, the facility where they could get medical attention. Well, there were several. One in Bramor, one in Zlaž, and one in mavets. In other villages, wherever was needed, there was a certain location that was designated for medical help in case it was needed, especially for the civilian population, which was in great numbers present in that region at the time. Question, I understand. And if you speak about the medical facility in Salih, I would like to speak with you about that before the offensive. And that is what I call the second offensive. Was that medical facility, was that occupied by who actually? And then the answer is after the offensive, and then the question is no, before the offensive. Before the second offensive, you said yesterday, it was April 18. I'm calling it the period before April 18. There was a location where we kept the wounded and ill. It was a private house, I see. Answer, and today it is marked as the house where the ill or the wounded were treated. Question, thank you very much. That location, how far is that from the school? Answer, 1 kilometer. Question, and if you stand, so to speak, on top of the school, would you be able to see it? Answer, to my knowledge, maybe it is visible. Thank you. And then the presiding judge interrupted and said that we had lost the connection. So that is where we stand, Your Honor.
Very well.
Okay.
So now Mr. Mustafa is up to what we have been doing, up to speed up with what we have been doing in the court. You may proceed with your questioning, defense counsel.
Thank you. The medical facility where there is this plaque, as you described, on that house, was that the medical facility, to be clear, used after the offensive, after the second offensive?
I'm not sure about the time period. It could be that it continued to be used after the second offensive.
Thank you very much. Was there any meeting of the commanders of the Brigade 153 before the offensive started? There have been 2 offensives, but were there any meetings before the 2 offensives conducted by the Brigade Command, Brigade 153?
I don't remember, Counsel.
As a member of the Brigade Command, how was the Brigade Command in fact informed about upcoming offensive or possible offensive, potential offensives? How was the command informed about that?
Through radio communications, because we were busy on the ground and it was impossible for all of us to get together at one time. So the consultations, the information was passed through radio communications, even from larger distances.
Salih Mustafa about possible movements of Serbian forces in the period of April 1999.
I'm not sure. It could be that we had such information, but I'm not sure.
Was that information that you received before the 2nd of April, before the second offensive, that is the 18th of April, 1999?
It could be that we had communication on the presence of such a risk. It is possible.
Would you actually know where Mr. Mustafa was at that time?
Neither myself nor Mr. Mustafa, during combat operations, during offensives, could stay in one location all the time, because we had to deal with the positions, with the intelligence, and with the preparations for combat operations.
The information that he passed to you or other people of the command, do you recall if that was valuable information?
Of course, yes.
How many times have you actually seen Mr. Mustafa in Zlaj?
I don't remember how many times I saw him, but I saw him many times. We were comrades in arms. We were positioned in the same location, so I cannot recall a specific meeting, but we did have routine meetings. We would routinely meet each other.
And routine meetings, would these meetings be conducted in person or would they be conducted over the radio?
In person, in my own house.
Was there any particular period of time that he was on the move?
On the move?
Normal.
Of course.
Which areas?
No comment.
No, I don't have such information. I don't know. At the time, we didn't have a detailed information who was where in a given moment of time, unless there was a need to contact that person. Then in that case, we would contact him.
Period of April 1999, let's say the first 3 weeks of April 1999. Do you know if Mr. Mustafa supplied any medical stuff for the brigade or anything in Zlaj? Do you recall that?
I don't remember that. He might have done that, but I don't remember.
When he would stay in Zlaj, where would he actually stay?
Mostly he stayed at the Skifera base, but also at my home.
Do you have any knowledge how frequently he actually was in Zlaj in the period of time between, let's say, the 1st and the 21st of April? That you have seen him yourself?
I don't remember that.
Lastly, I would like to ask a photograph to be shown to the witness, Your Honor. That is the photograph that we have seen. And the photograph bears number SPOE 00128388. Mr. Sopi, this house, where does it stand? And I mean, we see 3 houses, obviously, and if we indicate from right to left, a higher house, a middle house, and a house on the left, a structure on the left. I want to speak with you about the right building. What is that building?
We discussed yesterday too. This is the building belonging to Krasniki family.
What it has been used for?
To my knowledge, that is the guest room.
In that house?
Yes, I was there as a guest too before.
So in the period of April 1999?
I don't recall. I may have been.
And what, when you would go there, would be the use of it? Was there any particular use?
No, the soldiers of the Kosovo Liberation Army stay there.
There? Were they accommodated there?
Yes, yes.
The structure in the middle, was that used for anything? In the middle of the photograph?
No, I don't think so. It was not usable then. I don't think so.
Was that used for anything?
No. It was a barn used by the family to keep the animal feed. But I don't think it would be useful for the KLA. I'm not sure, but I don't think so.
I want to clarify something because
Sure.
here I get I have still some questions. Are we about what period are we talking now?
I said that it was used by the family, but I don't know what it was used for during the war, other than for the soldiers to stay there, because the rest of the compound cannot be used for anything. The house served as a place of accommodation for the KLA soldiers. This is how I understood the question and answered accordingly.
About the use of the 2 buildings on the right of the higher building. Huh?
On the left.
On the left of the higher building. Thank you, Defense Counsel. Have you been in those buildings?
No.
Just earlier you said, I may have been in that period of time there.
No.
Yes, in the higher house I meant. Not in the lower facilities, which I think were not used for anything.
It was in the period of April 1999.
I'm not sure, no. I don't think I've been there during that period.
Okay.
Microphone, please.
So we have to stop again. The connection with Mr. Mustafa has been lost. Mr. Mustafa, can you hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you assist us in telling till what moment you could follow the proceedings?
I don't think I missed much when Fatmir started to answer the second question, that he was there, something like that. When he started to answer the second question. When we were talking about the house. I don't think I lost much.
Hear the question of your defense counsel when he said, and to be clear, that was in the period of April 1999?
No, from here I think. This I didn't hear.
In the lower facilities, which I think were not used for anything. That you heard. Okay.
This I heard, yes.
Just read these two phrases out.
Sure.
The question is, and to be clear, that was in the period of April 1999? The answer, I'm not sure. No, I don't think I have been there during that period. And then we lost the connection. Defense counsel, you may proceed.
Are you absolutely sure that you were not in that building in the period of April 99, or just do you not recall whether you were there or
not?
Mr. Counsel, from the 7th of April 99, I was charged with the duty of Commander of Military Operations in Prapashica zone, neighboring Serbia. And from that time, I have always been there, taking part in the fighting. Whereas the second offensive, until the second offensive of 18th of April, very rarely I returned to Slush. When the second offensive was launched, I worked in Marets, Zlazhivogel, Mrahmur area, leading the war operations in that region.
And before the 7th of April, are you sure that you have not been in that building in Zlazh? In that building on the photo on the right? Before the 7th of April?
Mr. Counsel, I don't remember all the places that I stayed by date and time. 24 years have passed, so I can't remember everything accurately. That was not important for me. Important for me was to protect the civilian population and to prepare for laying the ambush for the Serb forces.
Very much. Mr. Sopi, I would like to have 1 minute. Thank you very much. We have some final questions, and then we will end our questioning. Mr. Sopi. Have you ever heard of people in Slash being mistreated. For example, that candles have been burned on those people. Have you ever heard of people being mistreated in Slash? For example, by burning with candles?
This makes me laugh because it's impossible. It's something that could never happen, not in Slash, but everywhere.
If that was done by iron rods or electroshocks and beatings with metal bars.
No, never did I hear, and I don't think it could ever happen.
Why do you think it could ever happen, actually?
It could not.
Could not happen, of course.
I believe my past, the past of my comrades, and I'm certain that no one, unless this happened when the Serb forces occupied Slash and stayed there for one night, and only this happened during that particular period, but committed by the Serb forces. Otherwise, the KLA has waged war, liberation war, and there was no civil war between people. So such things could not have ever happened unless they were perpetrated by the Serb forces when they stayed in Slash.
I understand. Do you know if have you ever heard if Mr. Salih Mustafa has ever ordered or conducted himself beatings, people being mistreated, or people being cruelly treated, as I just mentioned, what forms that could take place? Have you ever heard?
I know Salih Mustafa. I knew him even before the war as a former political prisoner and as a man that was subjected to the most savage tortures by the Serb regime. And I would never believe that the same person could use violence against anyone for whatever reason in any case.
Mr. Sopi, did anybody else ever spread such information about Salih Mustafa that you know of?
No. I never heard of such a thing related to my co-fighter, Mr. Salih Mustafa.
When you had sometimes meetings with him in Slash, would the subject ever come up of spies or collaborators or whatever in that form?
Never that topic was discussed among us, under no circumstances.
And within the KLA or within the brigade, was there any division among soldiers or within the brigade of people who had maybe a particular political affiliation, or did that play any role at the time?
Under no circumstances and in no form was political orientation of any KLA soldier the issue. Liberation of the country was our goal. Political convictions were of no interest to us at that time.
Thank you very much. 1 second. Okay. Yes. I have a last question for you, Mr. Sopi. The structure of the 153rd Brigade, did it follow the same organizational structures as the previous brigades, 151 and 152?
I think approximately yes.
In those sections, was there a section operations? Within the brigade, was there a specific section for operations?
Yes.
I have no knowledge about that. I don't know.
Counterintelligence?
No, I'm not sure.
Section or unit for morale and politics?
Part of the structure it was, but as how it functioned, I don't know.
And was there a particular section for civil protection within the Brigade 153?
Yes. When the brigade was structured, there was such a sector. I was in charge of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. We have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Defense Counsel. Okay, before we adjourn for the break, the panel may allow for redirect examination. Mr. Prosecutor, do you wish to proceed with redirect examination of the witness?
Your Honor, the prosecution doesn't have any questions in redirect.
Thank you very much. Victims' Counsel, would you like to ask additional questions?
Yes, Your Honours, very briefly though, so this can very conveniently be done before the break.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Sopi, good morning. So, obviously we are focusing on the period March-April 1999. And actually, what were those days like? Were they hectic and demanding, or rather quiet?
They were very intense. They were not quiet. There were never quiet days in the wartime.
Thank you. And I understand from everything that you said earlier that the protection of the Kosovo civilian population was an important part, and we heard just earlier on question of the defense that you led the effort in Brigade 153 of civilian protection. Against this background, did you come into contact with any Kosovar civilian population during that time period?
Of course, yes.
Thank you. And so did people, for example, ask you for any help people as in civilian population? Did members of the civilian population ask you for any support, any help, any assistance, approached you with questions of any kind, very broadly?
Yes, all the KLA soldiers at the time were in the service of accommodation, systemization, and care for our citizens who were forcefully driven out of Pristina and its environs. And we tried to meet their demands as much as we could by offering them food. I remember very well that we, soldiers of the KLA, had decided to deprive ourselves of one meal and provide that meal to the civilian population. Instead of eating 3 times, we ate 2 times. All the reserves that we had for the needs of the war at that time, we made them available to the civilian population.
I appreciate your answer. So just to briefly say yes or no. So yes, you were in contact and were approached for assistance. If I assume a yes is the correct answer here. Is that right?
Yes.
Is it also correct that you have problems with names? As you said yesterday morning, which is the transcript of the 18th of January, page 52 in lines 19 and 20.
No computer.
Is there a question?
Is it correct that you do have problems with names?
Yes, yes.
And if that is so, can you rule out that you may have forgotten the names of some of the civilians that you might have been in contact with at the period of March or April 1999?
During that period, I had contacts with many soldiers of the KLA, with many civilians.
On my question, it is very simple. The question is a yes or no question. If that is so, can you rule out that you may have forgotten the names of some civilians you might have been in contact with at the time?
Your Honor, I have a...
Come and see.
It may be possible.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. The question is actually whether such a question is allowed, whether it's such a closed question, and whether anything can be ruled out in any case. So I really object to this line of questions. It's better to ask what he does or what he does not remember or whatever. But I mean, in this manner, you can't rule anything out in life. So such a container type of question, I don't think it's appropriate.
May I, Your Honor, please respond to this yes or no questions? We have heard a lot this morning, plenty, by during the defense questioning, and for that reason, I do not understand why an objection to a question that is a yes or no question and that concludes a line of questioning that was very open to start with and then narrowed things down would in any case be leading. I am concluding and I'm clarifying things that are of importance and that are of importance that came up through defense questioning, and that for that reason I think it is very well within my right and within my quest to actually contribute to truth-seeking here to better understand some of the certainties or uncertainties with which we have to approach the witness testimony.
I will allow, we have already had the answer, and I will allow for this question. I think that the way it was set up could lead to, in the end, a more close question. So we can proceed.
Thank you. As you have said, we've heard the question, and this was my last question, and with that I have closed my examination. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Witness.
Thank you. Microphone, please.
Victims' Counsel, do you have any questions anymore?
No, thank you, Your Honours. I have finished my questioning with that, and thank you, Mr. Sopi, for your answers.
We are now approaching 11 o'clock. Mr. Sopi, we will take a half an hour break, and at 11:30 we will resume, and then we will continue after that. Yes? Okay.
Thank you.
We adjourn till 11:30.
All right. All right.
Very well, we will call appearances, but we can do that quickly. I see that the SPO is in the same composition. I see Mr. Prosecutor nodding. The same goes for the Victims' Counsel. Thank you for that. And the Defense Counsel also. So, Mr. Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Your Honor, if I may very kindly ask to just pose one question in redirect examination. I know my time has passed. Nevertheless, in the break, we had a very short consultation between the counsels, and we realized that there is one remaining questions that will still clarify the record. It's going to be for the benefit of everyone.
No problem, of course. I will, after we have ushered the witness in, I did not talk about the order of things, so we can surely do this.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Very well. Madam Court Usher, could you bring the witness in, please? Welcome back, Mr. Sopi.
Thank you.
We'll now continue with the examination. I asked the Specialist Prosecution Office before if they had any questions, and they didn't have, but they have now. So I will allow them to ask you a question. And then we will do the round and we will end with the judges. Have you understood that?
Yes.
The floor.
Thank you, Your Honours. Mr. Sopi, welcome back. I actually have just one question that will attempt to clarify one of the answers that you gave earlier on today. On page 26, lines 10 to 12 of today's transcript, we had an exchange between my learned colleague, Mr. Van Bonnet, and yourself about the place where you kept in slash the wounded and the ill. And upon the question of Mr. Van Bonnet, how far was that location from the school where you kept the wounded and the ill, your answer was the distance was 1 kilometer. Do you confirm that?
I did not measure the distance, Mr. Prosecutor. I spoke in approximate terms. I'm not sure about the exact distance.
My question would be, how far was that location where you kept the wounded and the sick from the compound occupied by the BIA unit?
Even in relation to that, it could be 2 kilometers.
Going towards the direction of the school or elsewhere? When we take as a starting point the compound of the BIA unit, in which direction would you go to reach that place where you treated your wounded and sick?
Going south from the village.
Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions, Mr. Sopi. Thank you, Your Honours.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. Victims' Counsel, you have had your moment and you're fine with this?
Yes, no further questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Defense Counsel, do you wish to proceed with the rejoinder examination?
No, Your Honor, it's okay.
Okay, very well. Mr. Sopi, you have been asked several questions by the Prosecutor and the Victims' Counsel and the Defense Counsel, and the judges would like to ask you also some additional questions to clarify some points, and it will help us to gain some more clarity of what you have already stated, and we will in this way better understand, we hope, some issues we have been discussing yesterday and today. Let me see. Two topics I would like to discuss with you. The location of BIA. Yesterday you testified on the location used by the BIA in Salih. And for the records, that is the real-time transcript, for example, page 22, lines 1 till 7. And my question to you is, Mr. Sopi, why were the BIA using the village of Salih for the location of their unit?
I think that BIA unit used this base of the KLA, this house, as their own base because they could not carry out their activity in Pristina, from where the majority, if not all, the KLA soldiers that were members of BIA came from. They were not secure and safe in Pristina at the time, which was under the control of Serbian police and military forces, and that's why they used this location as their base.
And what was so special about this place, about this base, about this location?
I think there was nothing special about it. It was just like any other base of the KLA.
Okay. Let's go to your SPO witness statement, and I will call out for the record, and we can also pull it up. That is ERN 06974 TR-ET, part 2, page 20, and it starts with line 13. And I will read it out for you. It's not, and it will be translated for you. But it is, I pulled it up just to check for the other parties and the participant. So the question is, why were BIA using the village of Salih? And then you answer, I would have thought because it was at a distance from where they were and because it was higher up in the mountains. I would have thought, due to safety for their soldiers. And could you clarify some more about higher up in the mountains, what you meant with that?
Higher up in the mountain, I was thinking of the following: the distance from Pristina, it's up there. So Salih is at 210 meters above the sea level. So that this is what I thought. There they could not be the object of Serbian attacks. Otherwise, the BIA soldiers had their own families in Pristina, and that would put their families also in danger if the enemy knew that any of their family members was a member of the KLA. Interpreters kindly ask the witness to repeat how many meters above the sea level the location was.
Mr. Sopi, the translator has asked you to repeat how many meters slash was above sea level. Apparently they have not understood it well.
Nimi
1,210 meters above the sea level.
Okay, thank you for that. My question is, why would this count specifically for the BIA unit and not, for example, for other KLA units, like, for example, Brigade 153? Was there no safety issue for them?
No, even the Brigade 153 had its main points or positions in Zlash. The headquarters of this brigade was all the time in Zlash.
So, do I understand you well that you say that the position of slash was safer for the KLA units that were there to be better shielded from the Serbs?
Yes, this is what I'm talking about. In general, the height was used to shelter from the penetration of the Serbian forces, so that their movement could be observed easier. Any beginning of a Serbian offensive could be observed easier.
I thank you for your answer, but for me it still is not clear that when you were asked by the SPO why it was the BIA using the village of Slash, you said because it was higher up in the mountains, and you did not refer to any of the other units that were stationed there.
I wasn't asked. Otherwise, the 153rd Brigade had its headquarters in Zlash.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sopi. And then let us go to the same document we have here, but then to page 16, line 2. Madam Court Officer, could you please assist us with that? And then the question is, when did BIA start? When did the BIA presence in Slash start? And then you answered, they'd come earlier on to that place and they used it as a base. So they wouldn't be discovered in the town. And then my first question is, in the town, to what do you refer? To which town do you refer?
Pristina.
Pristina.
Okay, then, and here you use the term discovered, and do I understand well that it's a way of hiding for the Serbs? They were hiding from the Serbs. Is that what you meant to say?
Part of Sharon Gassar.
Yes, to hide themselves from the Serbs.
Okay. So, for my understanding, the choice of Slash was a specific one. It was because, if I understand you well, I'm making a summary of what you said in order to see if I have understood you well. I don't want to misinterpret you. The reason to choose Slash was the location of Slash. Higher up in the mountains, far from Pristina. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Correct.
I've asked you that question because on an earlier moment in time, you said that the choice for Slash could have been any other town. But I understand that there was a natural environment reason to choose it.
Po, e vërtetë është.
Yes, that's true.
Thank you for clarifying that. Then I have one topic more, and that is with regard to the second offensive that took place in the second half of April in 1999. Did the Serbs manage to enter Slash at the second offense?
Po.
Yes.
Do you know when that was that they entered Slash? So not when the offensive started, but when they entered Slash?
Unë besoj se
I believe that the offensive began on the 18th of April. We resisted it for 3 days and prevented their penetration in Slash. And at the end of the third day, when the civilian population withdrew in the direction of Pristina, and after the continuous shelling, we suffered losses within our ranks and the civilian population, we were forced to leave our positions, in the sense that they started to penetrate with tank and heavy military equipment in the direction of Slash, and that's when they succeeded to occupy Slash.
If you have to give that a date, you said the third day, and I'm counting from the 18th, would that then be the 20th of April?
rreth 20 prillit.
Around the 20th of April.
Or after?
Mund t'jetë 20.
It could be on the 20th or 21st of April.
Thank you, Mr. Sopi. And where do you know where the Serbs went when they entered Slash?
Serbët
The Serbs set on fire all the houses initially, and they entered almost every house in Slash. First, they shelled with their artillery the school and the houses that could be seen on the top of small Slash or Slashy I Vogel, and that's when the shelling started. And then the infantry entered the area, and they reached almost every house in Slash.
Did the Serbs manage to reach the compound, or let's formulate the location where the BIA had set up their location, so the house of the Krasniqi family?
Po.
Yes.
You know what they did there?
Jo, nuk e di se nuk kemi pas.
No, I don't know, because it was impossible for us to know. We only knew that they burned all the houses.
Did they burn the houses of that location?
Pjesën dërmuese.
The majority of the houses, Yes, the majority of houses, maybe one or two of them were spared, but the majority were burned.
If I recall well, we have had a look at a photograph both today and yesterday. And you indicated that that was the same location as we are now talking about, if I understood it rightly. And those houses were not burned down.
That part was not burned down. However, the part of the houses on the other side, those were completely burned. They were burned down because there were other houses there too.
And do you know if they went up to this BIA location with heavy armored military, like tanks?
I cannot tell you precisely with what kind of forces they penetrated that area. However, I know that they reached every point in Slush.
Was it, you said before, I heard that you said that the Serbs approached Slash also with tanks. Was it possible to go up to that location of the BIA with tanks due to the type of area, because we were going up into the mountains?
It is possible. There are paths, there are fields, so it was completely penetratable because people there also move with the vehicles.
Okay. And what did you do when... now let me see. Could we say that they occupied Slash in the end, the Serbs?
Yes.
Where did you go then?
The majority of the brigade was in the area of Kolic.
Yes. And do you imply that you went to Kolic?
I personally, together with a group of soldiers, did not move from Slush.
Where did you stay at that moment, at that precise moment in time?
In the forest.
Okay, in the forest. So I will cite your SBO witness statement for the record, and that is, and we can also pull it up just to check that we have the right quotation. That is ERN number 06974-TR-ET, part 3, and then it's page 14. You say in line 3, we stayed in Slash, but we didn't stay with the Serbian forces. We moved around. We went up in the mountains. When you say you went into the forest, is that what you mean, that you also went into the mountains? That you mean the same thing?
That's the same thing. The same thing.
Discussion on that at an earlier moment in time. Okay. So you stayed in the mountains hiding?
Mountain, forest, it's the same thing. Yes, of course.
So you stayed there in the mountains?
Okay. Yes.
To do?
Me pas u vendosëm
After that, we stationed ourselves in a house that was not detected by the Serbs and was spared from being burnt down. That house was situated in the mountain, that is, in the forest.
Let us go back for one moment to the location where the BIA was stationed in Zlaž. You said that the Serbs went up till there. Did I understand it correct?
po.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indicate when that was in time?
Thash ditën
As I said, on the 20th or 21st of April.
And I also understood well that you cannot say, apart from burning one part down, let me say it differently. Were you there? Have you seen it? What they did at the moment that they were doing it?
jo s'kemi mund të
No, we could not go closer.
Afterwards,
vetëm pasojë
we saw only the consequences, the noise, the firing, the shelling. So we were observing all these from a distance, not from a close point.
okay. And were there still soldiers of the BIA there? Do you know that?
jo.
No, I didn't see any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sopi. However, I will consult with my colleagues to see if there are any further questions at that moment in time. My colleague at my left side has an additional question for you.
Mr. Sopi, you said that the KLA went to Zlaž because they were protected there. If I understood you correctly, the BIA location was even up in the mountains.
Yeah. Excuse me, we lost the connection of Mr. Mustafa. Mr. Mustafa, can you hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
We lost the connection again. Did you hear me asking the last question, and did you hear the answer of Mr. Sopi to it?
I heard you up to the moment when you turned to consult with the rest of the panel. That's where the connection was lost.
Mustafa, then I will ask my colleague at my left side to repeat. He was halfway his question, to repeat the question. And then you have not lost anything, and we don't have to read out anything. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I will repeat, adding one word. Mr. Sopi, you said that the KLA went to Zlaž because they were protected there, because of the location of that village. If I understood correctly, the BIA location was even higher up in the mountains. Do I understand correctly that therefore in Zlaž, the best protected unit of the KLA was the BIA?
I don't know if they were the best protected unit. However, that part of Zlaž where BIA was based was more protected. It's not that they were there upon a request. It just happened that that house was empty. and they could accommodate themselves there. There was no specific request for a specific base.
House where they were was more unreachable than, for example, the school.
It was just higher up for 1.5 to 2 kilometers distance.
So it was more difficult to reach.
Yes.
When during the offensive of the Serbs, the second one, starting on 18 April, you said that you went to the mountains. When did you go back? How many days did you stay in the mountains, and when did you go back to Slash? Which day do you remember?
We returned after the withdrawal of the Serb forces. And also, as I said earlier, we settled in the house situated in the forest.
So, when did you see again, after the Serbs retired, after they withdrew, when did you see again the house where the BIA was located and the school?
After some days, because we couldn't penetrate the village, I couldn't see, because everything was burned down and destroyed.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Microphone, please.
Mr. Sopi, we reached the end of your testimony. I would like to thank you very much for your efforts you have put into giving your testimony before this panel and to assist us in our efforts to find the truth. Thank you very much. This is the end of your session here in this courtroom. I wish you a safe journey home. I remind you that you should not discuss your testimony before this chamber with anyone. And I wish you a safe trip back home. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish you good work. Goodbye.
Thank you, Madame Court Usher. Even without asking. Very well. I will do the usual round to see if there are any questions or observations to make at this moment in time. Mr. Prosecutor.
Your Honor, no questions, no observations on the part of the prosecution.
Thank you. Thank you. Victims' Counsel, you have the floor.
Thank you. Nothing from us to add. Thank you.
And Defense Counsel, you have the floor.
No observations, Your Honor. Thank you.
Very well. If there is nothing else to raise by the parties in the Victims' Counsel, we will resume on Tuesday, 25th of next week at 9:30 for the testimony of witness 4484. Yeah. And I thank the parties and the Victims' Counsel for their attendance, and I thank the stenographer and the interpreters and the people of the audiovisual booth, and of course the security for their assistance. The hearing is adjourned.
All rise.